Prisoners. That's right. This is Jack Powers, and we're going to be talking about John Lee Paul Sr., pretty famous race car driver in the late 60s and through the 70s. Into the early 80s, he was on a tear. This guy was a Harvard-educated MBA in business who made millions before becoming a race car driver at a very early age. He had it all: fame, fortune, money. He wanted more. More at that time was drug smuggling. And in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, marijuana was a big commodity. It was huge. If you could bring in a few tons every couple weeks, you could easily distribute it and make even more millions throughout the United States. So that's what he was doing. He had a boat, schooner, sailboat, and he would bring in the pot by the ton. So he ended up getting caught for that in one episode of his life. And then a little bit later on, a partner of his, I guess, had decided to work with the feds, and he found out about it and tried to kill him, tried to get him in the trunk of a car. He was out. He told me all about it. I mean, I know everything about his case because I met him at Leavenworth around 1991 or so, and he wanted me to help him prepare and file a petition for writ of habeas corpus to challenge his convictions so he could get out a little bit sooner. He was doing a 25-year sentence altogether. And he was at Leavenworth. He would have been at a camp or somewhere, but he was at Leavenworth because of an escape attempt earlier on. Once you make any kind of an escape or escape attempt, you're going up to the penitentiary. 9 times out of 10. So there we were in USP Leavenworth back in the early 90s, and we had a lot of conversations back and forth. But he had lured his partner down to this dock, and it was supposed to be vacant. It was at night, and he was going to get him in the trunk of the car and take him somewhere and disappear him, right? But dude was way wary because he's working with the feds and he's already nervous, and here he's meeting him out in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. So he took off and tried to run, and John Paul blasted him and had a .38, shot about 5 rounds. I think hit him 4 times or something like that, but he didn't die. So John Paul was convicted of, not convicted by trial, but by plea of attempted murder. And first degree attempted murder went out into the feds. So that's how he ended up in Leavenworth in the early 1990s, where I met him. And then, of course, later on, John Paul was transferred to USP Atlanta. And sometime after he was transferred there, I was transferred there. And I met him again, saw him again. He was in B block on the second range, and he had a single cell. He had it really nicely appointed. He was keeping his hair really shaved down to his head, like a bald look. And I'm not completely bald yet. I mean, I've got a little bit of hair still up here, but I'm getting there. But yeah, he had a nice cell. He had all of his drawing equipment, all of his drafting equipment, a big table. It looked like he had gotten maybe from education or somewhere. So he could lay out all his really big sheets of drawing paper, drafting paper. He'd roll it up and put it in tubes. And he had all these tubes on top of his bunk with all his equipment. That's what he did. He designed and built sailboats, schooners. And he was really good at it, very good at it. And, he actually had the designs for the boat that he would have built and have ready for himself by the time he got out of prison in 1999. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because, John Paul was just in prison. He wasn't any kind of a tough guy. He wasn't trying to have beefs with anybody. He would go out of his way to avoid them. I remember one day we were out in the yard. We were lifting weights under the pavilion. And this black dude, I guess he wanted a certain weight or something. And John Paul had it. And so he just came over and he grabbed it. And, John Paul said, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm using that." And the dude turned around and, was ready to, I guess, attack him or something. And, I'm thinking to myself, man, am I going to have to grab a weight here and smash this dude in the head or what? I didn't want to get involved in something that was on my business. But it looked like he was just trying to go along to get along in the prison context. Now, I don't know, because Atlanta was a very violent and rough place. I don't know if he was paying for any kind of protection. I suspect that he probably had made some kind of a deal, but that's not etched in stone. But he was left alone. He was mainly left alone. And if you were somebody that wasn't all that tough, which he wasn't, and you had a lot of money, which he did, then you were going to be subject to extortion by one gang or another, or one group or another. And this is why I say he was likely paying somebody off to the side some amount of money to maintain his to be left alone, and probably also to get what he wanted in terms of a single cell and the big table and all those drafting tools and everything like that. But he wanted to get out of prison as early as he could. Of course, that's common. People typically don't like prison. They don't want to be there. They want to get out. They want to get their sentences cut. And he was just that kind of guy where he wanted to know all of the details, all of the options, all of the possibilities, and how everything could fit together. He's definitely an analyst in that sense. But he wasn't suffering. He wasn't chomping at the bit to get out. Like I've known other guys that were just you could just tell they were escape sick. They're very desperate people. He wasn't like that. He wasn't that desperate. Because, having a 25 year sentence in that era with the Sentence Reform Act laws was really a light sentence. Even though he ended up doing about 18 years, it was pretty light sentence overall. So, yeah, he was just hanging out. Didn't go to the chow hall very much. Ate mostly in a cell. He'd go to commissary. And again, that's another way that I think he was probably paying. Because if you go to commissary, which is way in the back corner, and you come out of there with a couple of big bags every week or every other week, and you're probably going to get run up on sooner or later, right? Because there's all kinds of wild shit going on down there. So, he had stuff, and he was living well in USP Atlanta. His daughter-in-law and his son lived in Lawrenceville, Georgia. So they were fairly close by. He got visits. He was doing okay. And then, I helped him put together a draft package of pleadings that I thought might be of some help to him, either in the courts or in front of the parole board, because he was under the old law and he was still eligible for regular parole, not supervised release, just regular parole. So I left that with him, that file, a copy of it, and then when my own incident happened, I was locked up and never went back to USP Atlanta again. So a few years later, he was paroled, and I guess he followed through with his plans, his dreams. I had known other people like him before, and there was an old man one time who just all he could talk about was hunting treasure. He had all these maps, he got all of these documents from all these different countries and old archived sea floor maps and the routes that ships had taken and all the logs and manifests of what was on those ships. And he had just records, books stacked up to his ceiling. And he was always talking about getting out, forming a company of investors to go look for this treasure. And he actually did it. And he was in his 70s when he got out. So, and he was successful. I don't know what happened to him since, but he went down to Florida and did everything he was talking about. So when Jean Paul was talking about, I just want to sail around the world, I just want to live off the grid, I just want to take it easy, I'm out of the dope game, I'm out of the racketeering, I don't have anything against anybody. And look, as far as I could tell, he didn't have an anger issue. I never once saw him fly off the handle or, even get loud with anyone. He just kind of flew under the radar. And I think that's kind of why he and I got along, is because we were both independent, didn't belong to any gangs or weren't in any cliques. And we just tried to do our own time and stayed at the sidelines. Just kind of fly under the radar and not bother anybody and just hope that nobody bothered us. So, of course, that it's rare for that to happen, that nobody's going to bother you or that you're not going to fall into some kind of situation. But apparently he didn't. And apparently he was successful in gaining his parole, and he went out to a schooner in Fort Lauderdale that was dry docked and waiting for him. I think initially he called it Island Girl, and because he really liked that song by Elton John, and he really liked the idea of being able to sail the South Pacific, particularly where there were a lot of islands, thousands of islands all over the place in the South Pacific. And he just wanted to get lost. He just wanted to live the rest of his life on his sailboat, his schooner, and just hang out, go from port to port, visiting place to place, and just have some enjoyment. I understand through research that he met a woman named Colleen Wood shortly after his release on July 2nd, 1999, and that those two were a couple. She left whatever she was doing in Ohio to come down to Florida, and they met, and apparently she left everything behind and went on the boat with him to sail the world. And they still very well could be together right now. Her family was all concerned that she became missing or disappeared or whatever. She wouldn't do that, she wouldn't do that. But I'll tell you, some people will do that. And who really knows? Who knows? I didn't see John Paul as being some kind of a psychopath. I really didn't. I didn't. I saw him as being a straight up dude that was gonna, he was gonna take care of business. He wasn't a prison tough guy, but he was very smart, very intellectual, very analytical, very strong intellect, and a bit of a philosopher too. He was definitely a bit of a philosopher, and it looked like he had finally found some peace of mind. So my own thoughts and feelings on the subject are that they're probably still together, just sailing around. Yeah, he's in violation of his parole. Who cares? Nobody's trying to really go track him down. How would you do it anyway? The U.S. Marshals aren't going to be able to get out there in Indonesia or the Philippines or any of those South Pacific islands and track him down. I mean, it'd be almost impossible. And a lot of them don't even have extradition treaties with the United States anyway. So he knew what he was doing. And if he's still out there just sailing around, living his dream after witnessing and being, in the mix with all those other experiences, I wish him luck. I wish him well. Now, on the other hand, maybe it is the way that everybody thinks. But I'd rather think positive, because I knew him fairly well. And, I see things in people. I know things. I've got a lot of experience reading people, particularly prisoners, and I would know if he was like that. And I don't think he was. I think he's still out there. I think she just decided to go with him. Didn't want any connections to her family. Probably had some run-ins or some disconnect with most of them before she ever left. And she just wanted to break free too. And just go live off the grid and have a happy life together. So that's my take on John Lee Paul Sr. And I'll see you the next time. Don't forget, if you're in the market for really good books about criminal justice reform, American Justice, Correcting Its Flaws, by John J. Powers, ADX Supermax, The Alcatraz of the Rockies, part of my own story about my years at ADX, the manual program, If You Have a Christian Mind, the Mind of Christ program, and there's a few other books that are up on Amazon. Lock and Key, Pacing the Cage, other parts of my story. So I'll see you next time.